Did you know flying aircraft carriers were real? This is a concept that has been attempted many times, both in modern times and when aviation was just beginning. But among all these prototypes, there was one that not only was carried out but also saw combat on multiple occasions, being extremely effective against the Germans in the early stages of World War II. Today we'll discuss the Sveno project, the flying aircraft carrier that disrupted the Axis. So make yourself comfortable and welcome to Guns Club. In 1930, military aviation was at its height, making it clear that aviation would be crucial in future combat. But the designers of that time were facing a serious engineering problem. Heavy bombers could carry a lot of fuel so they could fly long distances. However, the planes that were supposed to escort them didn't even have half the range of the bombers. This was a big problem because the fighters that were supposed to protect them from interceptors had to turn back long before the bombers reached their target, leaving these heavy and expensive bombers very vulnerable. For a long time, even until the end of World War II, the solution was simply to arm the bombers with defensive machine guns. But this method, as you may know, was not 100% effective, making the job of bomber crew members one of the most dangerous of the entire war. That's how in 1931, Vladimir Buckminsterov came up with a way to protect bombers much more effectively. What if instead of the escorts having to follow the bombers, they flew above them? If the bombers carried the escorts, they could travel long distances and be deployed when needed. This concept was unique and had countless applications for both defense and attack. The escort planes could also carry bombs, allowing them to carry out much more precise bombings on better protected positions, or attack ships without the bomber having to be involved. They could also directly attack air defenses, distracting them or even blinding them with smoke screens so they wouldn't attack the mothership bomber. Or they could also patrol the borders, waiting for other enemy bombers to intercept them. The potential of the concept was limitless. However, the Sveno project required a very large aircraft and very powerful. Fortunately, the Soviets did have it. This was the Tupolev bomber. These had enough power to carry whatever was mounted on them. Excellent. They already had a plane to mount the aircraft on, but now they had another problem: figuring out where to mount the aircraft. They couldn't be mounted just anywhere because they could interfere with the airflow, causing the bomber to lose control in the air. They simply tested each configuration by trial and error. And interestingly, what they discovered was that the more turrets you put on top of or under the bomber, the better performance it had. The wings of the planes provided much more lift. And since the plane's engines were running during the flight while drawing fuel from additional tanks, for the bomber, it was like having a couple of extra engines. The plane's weight didn't affect anything. Launching the aircraft into flight was quite simple, but as you might not guess, reattaching them to the plane was quite complicated. However, Buckminsterov developed an anchoring system so that the planes, with a bit of precision, could be anchored again. Exactly in mid-flight. Impressive, especially in 1930. Thanks to this anchoring system, they could communicate by telephone cable with the cockpit, and even a series of lights indicated the pilot's orders. The Sveno flew very well, although there were some problems on the runway. Loading the fighters was quite difficult. Everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean anyone who was on the runway, they were called to pull these huge ropes in order to get the planes into position. That was quite problematic because there were up to 3 tests a day. But fortunately, the Communist Party, when they saw progress in the project, gave them a big tractor to continue with the tests. The tests and proof of concept were satisfactory. The Svenos could fly and launch planes. By the time tests finished, Buckminsterov already had ready plans for airborne aircraft carriers that could carry more planes and specifically serve as motherships. By 1932, interestingly, the problems weren't about the project's feasibility, but stemmed from ongoing advances in Soviet aeronautics. When the I-5 appeared, the Sveno was modified to carry them as the Sveno WWII. In 1933, the TV-3 was introduced, a TV-1 with 2 extra engines. The Sveno had to be updated to use these new bombers as motherships, resulting in the creation of the Sveno II and Z3. Then in 1935 and 1936, with the I-16, the Sveno 5 and 6 had to be created, and in 1939 the definitive version of the Sveno SPB, would be released. Bach-Mistrop was able to adapt perfectly, and in 8 years of development, the definitive airborne aircraft carrier was achieved. The Soviet government was very impressed with the performance of the new Sveno SPB, so they ordered 40 of them to be used between the Air Force and the Navy. 1940 arrived, and with it, World War II would begin for the Soviets. By that time, the Axis powers kept expanding throughout Europe, and it wouldn't be long before they took Soviet territories, betraying previous cooperation treaties. This led the Soviet Union to activate its military industry to produce weapons very quickly. No time for prototypes meant only 5 of the planned 40 Venos were delivered. In June 1941, the Germans attacked the Soviet Union, and the defenses, not being properly prepared, quickly collapsed. Stopping the insatiable German army was something that had to be done from beyond the front lines. In the south, the Soviets quickly rushed into a massive attack against the Romanians to protect coastal cities like Odessa. The Soviets launched bombings to attack vital infrastructure in deep Romania, but the defenses were almost obsolete and nearly disarmed bombers. So to solve this problem and attack targets deep inside Romanian territory, they would bring the Esvenos into combat. They would carry several I-16s loaded with 250-kilogram bombs. Under normal conditions, they wouldn't be able to take off with so much weight. But thanks to the 4 powerful engines of the Esvenos, they could be taken into combat as if they were feathers. On their first mission, they successfully attacked several refineries. The Romanian interceptors, when they saw them, thought they were deserters, since no I-16 loaded with bombs could have made it so far into Romanian territory, so they didn't even attack them. The first attack by the Esvenos was a complete success, but the ultimate test was approaching. Within Romanian territory lay the King Carol Dron Bridge. This was the main logistical route for the Romanians on the southern front. All attempts by conventional Soviet bombers always failed, but the Sveno was the perfect candidate for this mission. The attack started on August 10th. 3 Esvenos dropped 6 bombs deep in enemy territory and, despite heavy resistance, damaged the bridge, but it remained standing. 3 days later, they attacked the bridge again and this time managed to destroy it. They didn't suffer a single casualty. In the following days, the Esvenos relentlessly attacked Axis positions, captured shipyards, bridges over rivers, and one after another fell with great precision. In one of these attacks on September 9, 1941, the I-16s managed to shoot down 2 PF-109s that tried to intercept them. They completed 30 missions successfully. However, beyond September 9, 1941, there are no further records of combat. It is unknown what happened to the remaining Esvenos. The conflict was devastating for the Soviet Union, so there were hardly any records kept of what was happening on the front lines. It was just retreat after retreat. Most likely, these were damaged after a bombing and were abandoned. These couldn't be replaced since the Tupolev bomber 3S were obsolete and no longer being produced. In any case, by 1942, the Soviet Union was able to make more effective dive bombers. It didn't result in a considerable loss. The Esvenos are a great example of ingenuity and resilience, teaching us that even the most outlandish ideas can surprise us. If you like this video, you might be interested to know why Allied B-17S would drop their ball turrets into the void while flying, sometimes with the gunner still inside. Thank you very much for watching this video, and goodbye.